For 6 long years, the world burned, nations fought, cities crumbled, and millions of lives were changed forever. But in 1945, something finally shifted. A moment the world had prayed for arrived, slowly at first, and then suddenly. This is the story of the day the war in Europe ended. This is the moment the world stopped to breathe. By early 1945, Germany was collapsing. Under relentless pressure from both East and West, its armies were stretched to their breaking point. The Soviet Union pushed toward the heart of the Reich, Berlin, advancing street by street, block by block. Meanwhile, Allied forces surged across Western Europe. France, Belgium, the Netherlands. Each mile gained was paid for in blood, sweat, and sheer exhaustion. Soldiers on all sides were no longer just fighting for victory, they were fighting for an end. The air itself seemed heavy with anticipation, waiting for the final, inevitable collapse. The fall of Berlin was the brutal, chaotic climax of the war in Europe. Soviet infantry stormed every district, their tanks rattling across mangled rail yards and through rubble-choked streets. The remaining German forces, now cut off, exhausted, and fragmented, could no longer stop the advance. Deep underground, in a concrete bunker beneath the city, Adolf Hitler finally realized that defeat was unavoidable. He refused to surrender, but reality was closing in with every passing hour. And then, on April 30th, 1945, came a strange stillness. Hitler was dead. What followed wasn't celebration, but a quiet, uncertain pause. The dictatorship began to crumble from within. Commanders debated the inevitable, knowing the war could not continue. Not anymore. The final surrender was now only a matter of time. On May 8, 1945, it became official. Germany surrendered unconditionally to the Allied powers. Across Europe, the guns fell silent. Bombs stopped falling, and as the news spread, people poured into the streets. It wasn't to boast or to gloat. It was because survival itself felt like a miracle. In London, bells rang out across a city scarred by years of air raids. In Paris, people danced beneath a sky finally free of warplanes. In New York, ticker tape rained down through the skyscraper canyons, a confetti storm of pure relief. This was V-Day, Victory in Europe Day. It was a moment of profound joy and collective exhale. But for all the celebration, the global conflict was not yet finished. Even as Europe celebrated its newfound peace, the war continued to rage fiercely across the Pacific. Japan still held vast territories, and its soldiers fought with incredible tenacity. The battles for islands like Iwo Jima and Okinawa were devastating. They were turning points, but they came at a horrific cost, transforming entire landscapes into battlefields of fire, steel, and raw endurance. The United States and its allies began preparing for a final invasion of the Japanese mainland, an operation they knew would cost millions of lives on both sides. But then came a decision that would alter the course of history and change the very nature of warfare forever. In August 1945, the world witnessed a power beyond anything ever used before. 2 atomic bombs were dropped on the cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The destruction was unprecedented. Entire cities were turned to ash in seconds. Lives were extinguished in a flash of light. The world was forced to confront a terrifying new reality, one that brought both a swift end to the war and a heavy, somber question about humanity's future. The decision to use these weapons remains debated, studied, and questioned to this day, but its impact was immediate and undeniable. Faced with this overwhelming power and the threat of further destruction, Japan agreed to surrender. On September 2, 1945, aboard the USS Missouri anchored in Tokyo Bay, Japanese officials signed the formal surrender documents. With that simple act of ink on paper, the deadliest and most destructive war in human history finally came to an end. This time, the moment was met not with cheers, but with quiet reflection. The scale of the destruction was visible everywhere you looked: in shattered cities, in displaced families, in entire populations grieving for what could never be restored. Yet, this moment also marked the beginning of a new chapter. The world stood at a crossroads, wounded, but alive, tired, but ready to rebuild something better from the ashes. The aftermath of World War II reshaped everything. It redrew maps, shifted global power, and transformed politics, society, and technology. Nations began the monumental task of rebuilding their economies, brick by brick. In the hope of preventing another global catastrophe, the United Nations was formed. Millions of people began their journeys homesome, returning to loving families, some to gravesites, and some to ruins that no longer resembled the homes they had left behind. But one simple, powerful truth stood above all the loss and devastation. humanity had survived. May 8, 1945, Europe exhaled. September 2nd, 1945, the world followed. The war was over, but its memory endured. It's not just a story of victory, but a solemn reminder of what war costs, and why peace must always matter more. Thank you for watching. If you found this story meaningful, please consider subscribing for more deep dives into history. We'll see you next time.